Hello, everyone. This is another episode of Contact Lost. I'll be your host tonight, and I'm Joker. And I've got two very special guests over from the Fireside, although I've got no chimney around my house. Nevertheless, please welcome Vik VJ and David Gaylard. Hey, guys.
Hi. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you for having us again.
Yeah, it's a great pleasure to have you. And we'll be talking about LVO prep first and foremost. And then if we've got time to make it in this episode, or we'll split into two, we'll see. Then we'll talk a little bit about team play, as we often do over on Contact Lost. And then about the new releases, although I know the guys aren't really focusing on that for now. So without any further ado, let's get into it. And well, guys, the ITC season is coming to a close, and it's been quite a season for both of you. So where do you think it'll end in Vegas?
It's going to be a tight finish, I think. Gosh.
Yeah, it's tough. I think Vik will win the ITC.
Oh my God. He's jinxing
No, I'm
me.
serious. I mean, I don't lie, but I mean, I kind of came to that. I kind of came to that conclusion maybe a couple of months, maybe a month or two ago. Especially after Vik won Leicester as well. It just and he had a big points lead on everyone. I think Nottingham has put us a little bit closer together. There is still a chance that anyone in the top four, I think, can easily win it. And LVO, something weird can happen, of course, but I think Vik's definitely the best positioned person to win it, not only on skill, army, but also, just straight up points wise as well.
I think this season's been a little bit interesting though, because we've had the influx of UKTC events impacting the ITC results, which has meant that quite a few of the UK players have had a good chance to compete for ITC #1, which is something that hasn't been the case for as long as I can remember. So we're kind of going into the end of the season with the top 5 having 3 players from the UK, which is really, puts a very good chance for it to be a non-USA player actually winning the ITC. I would say though, I do have the most points at the moment. I have a little lead of about 20 points on Jack Hopster, and going to the 5th place person, I think I have like 70 points ahead of them. So that sounds like a good amount, and it would be on any normal sized event. But in LVO, the amount of points that are up for grab means that literally it's kind of a season deciding event. And I only have a few places of advantage over one of the other players, and if anyone hits top 8 from that top 5 and someone else doesn't, the person who doesn't is out of the running, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely the penultimate event for the season, and I couldn't really think of a better way to finish it off in a lot of ways.
Is there like a certain amount of points that is known, or is it like totally dependent on the amount of attendees that actually make it on the day?
Yeah, I think that the Pandora's box or black box of FLG point associations for algorithms, or how many points they determine you get for an event with the rounds and size. Look, I'm a lead data scientist. Maybe I should just reverse engineer it at some point. But it's on a side note, it is a little bit weird that we don't understand how that's calculated. It's a bit strange. But yeah, in short, no one really knows the exact figures, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we can use LGT as a rough estimate of it, and I think the size of LVO will be just slightly bigger than LGT. So that can let us kind of work out roughly the positioning we need to get to achieve the kind of results we're after. But I think, if you look too deep into those kinds of things so that you kind of tactically play it, it's a little bit of a risky thing to do.
Oh,
because
yeah, it always is, isn't it?
because in an event of this size, with this many rounds and so many variables involved, including just the terrain sets being different from round to round, literally anything can happen, and there's a huge element of luck involved in it. I think, I was kind of trying to plan it really carefully, and then Dave was just like, "Yep, just going to take each round one at a time." And to be honest, I think that's probably the correct approach to take.
Yeah, nothing is given. Everything has to be taken.
Well put. And what was I going to ask about as well? You mentioned a non-US player winning it. Has that not happened before?
It has happened before. So obviously, I think we had Alex Harrison winning as well. Oh no, the whole ITC.
No, he won the LVO.
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone's won the entire ITC. And look, I think statistically speaking, we're in a good spot to win it as well. Like, I think anyone objectively looking at the top 5 would say that on par, a UK player should be winning it this year, whether it's me, myself, Vic, or Mike Porter. Because we've got 3-1 odds on Jack Harpster, who, when we're all at roughly basically the same points, Vic obviously with the lead. And I know that all 3 of us guys toe-to-toe with any of the Art of War guys that we're sending over. So I think you would want to bet against the US here, but they do have the advantage of playing on the home turf. They got no jet lag. They've got all the terrain as well and all those advantages. So there's that, that comes into it as well.
Okay, and is Mike going as well? Do you know? Probably no.
Yep,
Yes.
Mike will be there.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think it's generally a good thing that the rise of the UKTC in terms of the ranking itself, because if it was just the US players, it doesn't really reflect the hobby in general, does it?
Yeah, I would agree, because UK is such a powerhouse of 40k in so many ways, especially singles, and obviously Europe is a powerhouse of teams. So I think it is good to finally get that representation in there. And I've also noticed that the kind of talk or dialect around conversation around the UK having so many events has sort of dumbed down a little bit or died down a little bit, because I also did recently hear Jack saying that he went to 9 super majors, which is more than I think Vic and I ever played as well. And their super majors, whilst are smaller, have always 9 rounds more or less, so they actually reward more points. So I think at some degree, if you actually look at the USA scene, they would actually probably have a total net pool of points larger than the UK still. Wouldn't surprise me if that was the case.
Oh, because the number of rounds is also a variable.
Very
Jeez.
big impact.
Oh,
Yes,
huge
very
impact on ITC.
Much bigger than the number of players. So I think like a 9-round 200-man event is significantly more points than like a 7-round 400-man event. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting, because we've only got like classes of events in our little ranking in Poland, so it's either a GT or an RTT or something, and that's kind of it. Yeah. Regardless of the amount of rounds that are being played.
Hey, just play that 6-round RTT, man. Get lots of points.
Well, but if it's still an RTT, then it's worth less than a 5-round GT. But yeah, all right, never mind that. So you've just been to a GT in Nottingham, as far as I know. How did that go for you both? Vic, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge event. It had 390 players, which is extremely large.
Yeah, that is quite a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot, and it's more than what we kind of expected. Like I thought, with all the rules changes involved, the fact that Nottingham would still be using the old rules, that a lot of people wouldn't be interested in coming. But interestingly enough, we've had 390 players, which is the second largest UKTC super major. It's only LGT that had more. And we're very lucky in terms of chasing kind of a good ranking in the ITC to have this event just before LVO. And also in a meta that we understand. And when a meta has been stable for a period of time, player skill becomes one of the key deciding factors of success. And this kind of favors us as more experienced players. So I think both of us were quite positive going into the event. And I had a good run. I went undefeated, but I did take a draw in the last round. And Dave did a bit better than me.
Yes, I made it into the top 4, and then lost my first game in the semifinals against Mike Porter. I think I lost about 69-72, and that's simply because I just had a complete brain fart and didn't take a 15-point secondary. Instead, I took a 7-point secondary. So, look, mistakes are made. But, at that point, honestly, I think Vic and I both said to each other, like, man, I'm just happy to go 5-0 or make it like top 10 or top 12 because of the points. For me, like, so tournaments like that are so challenging, and I think that the tournament format, once it reaches that 400 player cap, is not really suitable. 5-round and then cut to top 4 makes it so there is so much luck involved in getting in the top 4. And look, I was favorable to get some matchups where I could score a lot of points. But other than that, there's a lot of people, competent players, just as good as me, playing armies that just as good as mine that can't make it in because of how the pairings worked out for them as well. So I think maybe UKTC, given how much it's grown and how popular it'll be next year, will need to adjust for that. And maybe we need to start thinking about how we can make those larger tournaments a bit of a less of a lottery, because it kind of feels like some points you just smash players for 5 games and then you play a game. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the next season holds. But the tournament was great for both of us in terms of points. I don't think like I said, I think we were both just going into it saying, look, if we can just make 5-0, get a lot of points, like the eye is still on the prize in Las Vegas. And it's difficult not to be overshadowed when you've got such a massive tournament happening in just the weekend or 2 weekends after that.
I mean, I think it's kind of hard to avoid that sort of situation that you've just mentioned, that you might just get lucky on the pairings, especially when the number of attendees is so big. Do you have any ideas how that could be, I don't know, minimized? Because if you just take the highest point scorers, we have had a drama or a couple in the community overall about submarining and stuff like that. So do you think there is a perfect system to resolve that, to actually have, you know, top players battling out on top tables every round?
I mean, I don't think the system in itself is incorrect. I think a cut to the top four is sensible, played over 2 days. The problem is that the cut happens after 5 rounds on very large events, leaving, 8 players undefeated but not able to make the cut to challenge.
Which is the majority of players, right?
So,
that's the overwhelming majority of players that cannot make it.
The only solution is to play more rounds. Realistically, if you want to keep the same number of players. Oh, have you got an idea, Dave?
Yeah, so I had a different idea on this. I think the Americans have got a good way at tackling this. That after day 1, they cut to the top 16, and then top 16 plays a separate tournament on day 2, a 4-round event, and then they split the rest of the tournament into pods of 32. So that you then play players in those pods, and then you've got a chance to play, a chance to win top bracket in your pod as well. I think that's definitely something we could look at, or you could split the tournament into 2 lots of 200 or something like that as well.
Okay, and the top bracket would play more rounds, is that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, because for example, you could still play, if you had the top 16 on day 2, you could play 2 rounds, and then it would be effectively a top 4, and that's exactly what we have on round 2 anyway. So there'd only be 2 players in the hall at 10:30 at night playing.
Got it.
By the way, but wouldn't that just be moving the cutoff to a different place? So
yeah,
problem still stays in a way.
Yeah, so it would make the cut larger and earlier, basically, which would hopefully mean that higher concentration of good players in a more condensed cut, instead of just having, like, I'm not saying it's perfect. I think it'd be an improvement, because in theory you would have a larger amount of players only battling each other instead of trying to stomp players to get 100 points, 100 points, 100 points, because often there's an imbalance of player skill that is very large, very deep into the tournament, even rounds 4 and 5, where you've got top players getting 100 points, 95 points, 98 points, which I don't think is a good player experience for basically anyone. As a player myself, I'd rather be fighting a top 16 direct elimination bracket where I don't have to focus on getting 100s and 95s, because it's not really like, it's playing Warhammer, but it's playing Warhammer a lot differently, in my opinion. I'd rather just have a top 16 where you can focus on getting points, right?
Bit of a solitaire.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. Moving on, guys. So, what have you been up to recently? Given that the LVO has been announced, they will be still played on Nephilim rules. Because I mean, the Nottingham that you've just been to, pretty sure that registration closed way before the date of release of Arcs of Omen was known, and it would have never made the cutoff anyway. But the LVO is a bit of a different story. So are you just playing still like the old game, so to speak, David?
Yeah, I'll leave Vic go, actually, because Vic's got a funnier side of the story. We have 2 exact opposites when it comes to this one.
All right.
Yeah, are we the opposite? I mean, yeah, in terms of practice, right?
Yeah, of course, right? Because, like, you were on holiday.
So I was away during, like, when all the drama was happening. Couldn't get any practice games of 40k in, but I just saw these messages like, oh yeah, they're going to use the new rules, they're going to use the old rules, and I was like, if they do use the new rules, what am I meant to do? Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to get enough practice, build an army, anything to actually be able to bring something good. I'll probably just have to, like, randomly take an army and hope for the best. And it's really lucky in the end that they did decide to go for, like, the safer option and just play the old rules rather than choose chaos. And Well, fortunately, that means that I get to run an army that I have had practice with. I've taken it to Nottingham. I've taken the Thousand Sons. I've taken the Thousand Sons to Leicester, and now I've done actually a few practice games on the LVO terrain. So I've got an idea of how the format works. So I'm feeling like pretty happy that they have chosen to go for the old rules. Otherwise, I probably would have been in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, Vic, I was talking to Vic a lot and talking with two of my other practice partners a lot around. We basically, as soon as it was up in the air of what they would play, we were basically scrambling around, trying out new lists, trying to guess what was in the balanced data slate early so we could play list rumors and everything like that. And I was messaging Vic on WhatsApp and being like, hey, I've got this list, like you could play this, like just trying to have something for Vic to like land into when he literally lands back into the UK and has like 2 days before the submission. So I was trying to like concoct the best list so that we could, and I was like, dude, this list is sick. Like, don't worry, but like we're gonna smash it and do really well. And I think the list we had in mind was really good anyway. But yeah, it was frustrating overall. It was, as a player, I think it was. I think they definitely made the right decision. I think looking back on LVO, I think we'll look back a year later and think it was good that they decided to go with the old rules. And I think that was a bit of a contrast between the UKTC and Frontline Gaming, because I think UKTC were very the TOs of, well, TO being Zach only really communicates directly and publicly. There's nothing on like UKTC Discord or something like that where you can see Zach has said like one this or one that, one thing this or one thing that. Like he will only post stuff publicly, which is really good because like you get the consistency as a player of being like, if it's in the pack, like it's in the pack, and Zach will like message everyone, be like, if this happens, like this will happen. He's like very strict on stuff like that. So I think that creates that consistency, which certainly in the UK we weren't used to with LVO, kind of flip-flopping back and forward. So yeah, I mean, I think we made the right decision in the end. I'm super happy because I get to cast more spells, so it's nice. And like it just lined up so well with Nottingham, right? Like we get to more practice. Like, yeah, it's super good. I think also with the controversy around like early access and whatnot like that, it was a bit of a recipe for disaster in some ways. I think if one of the creators that perhaps, or some of the creators that perhaps had early information ended up winning, there would have been a bit of a specter or a grey cloud over the tournament as well, which I don't think would have been healthy for the tournament or the community as well. So yeah, I don't know, Vic, what do you think?
Oh yeah, I think it was on the verge of descending into absolute chaos. Like
Yeah.
you saw the few Reddit threads start to come up, problems with people who have early access and all this stuff. And you can just imagine that would have blown up so much. And so, obviously me and Dave don't have early access to anything. So, we might have been commenting and complaining on the threads as well, for all you know. So I think those guys have escaped this, and I think this is better for everyone and better for the whole community. There was a risk of dividing not just the content creators, but dividing kind of the top players from everyone else and them getting targeted as part of this. So I'm really happy just all around that they decided to go this direction.
It's such a fantastic meta as well we're in, like I remember, like, mate, looking at Nottingham, the meta was pretty stacked. It was like Tau, Tyranids, Thousand Sons, Cal Space Marines, like Knights, Votan was in there, Eldari. It was, I'm sure I'm missing some as well, Harlequins as well. Even like Necrons and Sisters, like everyone had like the teeth-cutting meta list. Like it was crazy. It was like the penultimate Nephilim event for UKTC, right? Everyone got to like no punches barred, bring absolutely their best and try the best. So it was kind of fun at the event for sure.
All right. Well, I've got comments to make on that. So to our listeners, if you turn your volume up, you might hear Vic still typing complaints about those early access issues. But I was just taken aback by the bromance you guys have. I'm pretty sure that this might as well be posted on the Fireside channel. I feel kind of unnecessary here, but well, I'm really impressed, David, with the fact that you were already making lists for Vic. I mean, wow.
Yeah, I mean, Dave's really nice. He was like, "Oh, Vic, I'll print this army for you. I'll get this army ready."
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's no surprise. Like, Vic is obviously my really good friend in real life as well. And like, while we compete, and we have competed against each other a few times, and we obviously competing for rank 1 slot and stuff like that. Like nothing would make me happier than for Vik to win rank 1 ITC. Like genuinely mean that. Like obviously I'm super stoked for him, and like nothing would make me happier than for us to somehow finally play a finals against each other.
Oh
well.
yes,
And you
it's the
win
dream.
with Vik playing the list you put for him.
No, it's a
together.
draw. It's a draw.
Yeah, oh
that'd be
my gosh, can you imagine a draw? We'll 4-up it.
good.
Rock, paper, scissors, that's what they do in America,
Oh,
isn't
dear.
it?
Yeah, speaking of 4-ups, Vik actually had a 4-up at Nottingham as well. So if you want to listen to that, that's on our episode recently with Vik.
We had a in-game recording added onto our latest Fireside 40k podcast episode.
Oh, I have to check that out. Haven't had a chance yet, but yeah, I do listen to your episodes. It's really good listen. So, and guys, if you're listening here, go check out the guys' channel. It's really good. Right. So you talked about the early access, which is kind of what I was going to, something I was going to ask you guys about. So how do you feel about all of that? I mean, it was really kind of an elephant in the room, really, because obviously there are some people are playtesting. You can only assume who those people are, but they probably do show up at events. So how do you, as players who don't have this like information up front, feel about competing with people that might have had more intel prior to an event?
Do you want to set the tone for this one, Vik?
Oh, I mean, I'm a little bit more positive on the whole thing, to be honest, because I know content creators get the codexes early and playtesters get them months and months in advance to try and do things. And that's an important way for the community to kind of continue to function. The problem is, I think the timing was very unfortunate with this because normally they get access to an early codex, a single codex, and you can get an advantage with that. Sure, you can like buy out all the orc buggies, for example, but that in itself, just saying,
that's the one example you picked, of course.
There's perhaps an example there, but
is it completely accidental?
Yeah, if you turn up and those orc buggies are out of stock, you can probably work it out yourself. In a way, you have early access as well. So like that will have an impact on the meta, right? There'll be a single codex, maybe strong, maybe a little bit broken. But in this situation, this was game-wide significant changes from points, rules, and the overall balance of the game. And nothing that's good at the moment will necessarily be good then. And having even a few weeks of time before the deadline in a massive event like this, which decides the entire season, is huge. And there are content creators in the top 5 of the ITC who would have access to this. It's a major problem for LVO. And, if they had gone for the new rules, me and Dave probably would have had, 4 days, 5 days to get everything together, whereas the content creators might have had 2 or 3 weeks. And that may not be significant for the majority of players, but at the top end of competition, it's actually a huge, huge difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you cannot actually refine a list in 4 days. I don't know how much time any normal sane person has, but I genuinely might have had to have taken time off work to play 12 hours a day to try and figure out what the best lists were. So the advantage would have been very significant. And it's an interesting spotlight because obviously these content creators in general, it's a unique one because the majority of content creators don't compete at the highest level, so it hasn't really been a direct issue many times. But they're in a tough position too, right? Because obviously it's their livelihood and they love the game just as much as Vik and I do, of course, and they just want to play the game and play tournaments. So there's a huge amount of sympathy that we have for them because they're in a tough position between having to generate content and use these to generate content, and then probably not having any control over how early they get it. Like I don't think GW tells them 6 months in advance, oh yeah, we'll deliver it to you 3 weeks before then or 2 weeks. It probably just shows up at their doorstep. So they have no control over that, I suspect. And obviously they have to make the content, and obviously they want to compete as well because that's a part of how they make content as well. So yeah, I think there's a couple of they could just lock rules out a lot earlier for tournaments to where that wouldn't be such a big advantage. Because if we had 10 days, for example, that's a different story, right? And if we had compared to if we had 3 days, so then that wouldn't be such a big a deal. I think LVO, given that they've locked it back to December the 31st, I think will continue to do so as well for the next years, which would be that 2-week buffer as well. So hopefully it wouldn't be as big of an impact. But, I think they do serve a really important function for the community as well, in that, when singular codexes come out, it doesn't have as large of an impact, although albeit there were some codexes this season that had very large impacts, one that Vik noted as well. And then I think Tyranids were probably like that. Crusher Stampede was a little bit like that. And then I think we had Void Weavers as well.
With Tyranids, you could buy anything, though.
Yeah, it's true. And you could print a lot of them too, which is great. So, yeah, I mean, I have heard rumors that there are some people playing 10th edition already as well, which is interesting. I've heard rumors that these people potentially participating in the WTC, which is interesting as well. So, yeah, I think it's definitely a space where...
That's a problem. Gosh,
yeah,
I didn't know that.
Think this is definitely a space where we need to mature in a lot of ways. I think if, for example, Vik and I got offered to be in a content creator relationship to get early access, I probably would just turn it down, to be honest with you, because I wouldn't want the pressure of people knowing that I had early access, potentially thinking it's unfair, and then just being under the constant pressure of people asking me or Vik all the time of like, oh, what's the spoilers for this? What's spoilers for that? Like, it wouldn't be a very positive position to be into. So Vik and I were just gonna, be down with the common folk, scrapping for the rumors, refreshing that Reddit page, looking on those Discords, getting those photos, screenshots from people in the dark corners of GW. Yeah,
potato cam pics.
Yeah, potato cam guard. Yep.
And then making lists of screenshots from YouTube at midnight.
Yeah, pen and paper. That's how we do it.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure that plasma cannon's AP. It looks like it's -6. Yeah, it must be -6.
Easy, no problem. Might as well be.
Right. So, Vik, you've mentioned player experience early on in regards to the meta being stable for quite a while, because the last balance data slate didn't really impact it that much. So builds were clarified, you could say. But wouldn't you say that a change of rules shortly before a cutoff would actually benefit experienced players as well, or even more so than in the situation that we have now?
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, the larger the rules changes and the closer to a cutoff, the more it benefits people who are willing to take a list advantage. I mean, if you're, planning on buying all the buggies and playing them and no one else has the buggies, you probably win a tournament just like that, just purely on list advantage. But list advantage can supersede skill level at some points. And I think at the highest levels of competition, leveraging your player skill is one of the strongest strengths you have for reliable success in tournaments. So, there's a benefit in both ways. If you're willing to meta chase, you have the time to build the most busted, something is absolutely broken. Yes, you'll get a list advantage and win a tournament, but consistent winning is from player skill. And I think in this situation, the fact that we're on the old meta completely emphasizes individual player skill and not faction or list advantage, which I think is... I wonder if it's interesting for people spectating. I have a feeling people who are watching this tournament probably would have loved if Arcs of Omen was in and seen what kind of list ideas come out of it. But I think generally it's a much more healthy situation that we end up with kind of the best player winning the tournament.
Yeah, I think what Vik is also saying is that when player skill is at its peak and relatively equal, list advantage can be quite a determining factor in a number of ways. So if you've had a number of weeks to sort out like a lot of nuances about lists and about factions and matchups and practicing on those matchups, then regardless of the player skill, it's the player who hasn't had that much time is just going to be in the dark for a lot of ways, right, Vik?
Yeah, exactly. You nailed it. That's the opposite direction, and it's just a salient point there.
Oh, that's. I must admit, I haven't thought about it that way. So that was really interesting to hear. Right, so moving on with the old rules, new rules dispute in a way. Guys, how do you stay motivated to play the game now that it's completely changed in a way? Because like Arcs of Omen, we've got first leaks, like, I don't know, it was 5th of January, let's say, first time I've seen them, or that was even the balance data set dropped, and we had an RTT on the 7th. And I lost all the motivation to play on that because, well, it was really close to the date, so not everyone wanted to play the new rules. So it was really hard for me to go, and I was the TO, so I had to. So how do you guys stay motivated to play the old game? Or maybe it's not even an issue for you?
Yeah, well, I think Vic getting his name engraved in the Hall of Fame for winning the entire ITC is probably enough motivation for him.
And for you, Dave, you're right up there.
Honestly, I think the trick is just not to play the new stuff as well, right? Like, I don't, like, you know, I was just playing a practice game then. Like, obviously, I'm not practicing Arc of Omens, like, absolutely at all. You still really enjoy the meta. Like, genuinely really think the meta's in a good spot right now. And I think it has been for the last couple of months. It's been certainly the best it's been to date. And I've been still just really enjoying the game, but I think Vic and I just inherently enjoy playing the game and solving puzzles. So that's, you know, we don't need a huge motivator to go up and play. Sometimes we get burnt out, and coming up to Nottingham, I was a bit burnt out as well. But, you know, you think, oh, am I going to get back into it? You know, but, you know, you just jump on that plane, and then all of a sudden it's just like 40K is all you're doing, like living, breathing, and thinking for that weekend.
I'm kind of pretending that Arcs of Omen doesn't even exist. You know, I think that's better when preparing for LVO, but also I know I had my like cursory look at it and I was just like, Iron Hand's probably pretty strong. Guard probably pretty strong. And it's a bit daunting, you know, to gonna have to deal with that at some point. Whereas as things currently stand, sure, Flamers are good, but like they're no better than Kraken or Tau or Nids or Quins, you know. There's a lot going on, and you know, not an obvious standout faction necessarily being the best. So I feel like we're, you know, the grass is greener on our side at the moment, and at some point we're gonna have to cross over the fence.
Where it has different colors, definitely.
It's all
like
black.
the black of yeah. Exactly. So guys, how do you approach the trip to Vegas? I mean, because I imagine it's a logistical nightmare taking miniatures on the plane, and then also the potential jet lag, etc. Do you have the luxury of going like a couple of days early to, you know, minimize that jet lag, for example? Because obviously you're fighting for the top spots, so I assume that the mental and physical prep must be on point.
Yeah, it's difficult. There's no way to get around the fact that it's a disadvantage having to travel across the world. And it's what I do find interesting is the lack of American players that come across to play LGT. And perhaps that's a contributing factor for them as well. But obviously the distance is just as far for us to make it to LVO as well, right? I'm very lucky. My aunt and uncle live in Las Vegas, so I've been there maybe 7 or 8 times. They pick me up from the airport and have a great place to stay. Literally, like they drop me off at the Rio, like everything, man. So I'm super lucky with that. But I'm also going to be arriving a day earlier, 2 days earlier, and I've got an exhibition charity match with Anthony Vanella on the Thursday as well. So we got a couple of games to get in beforehand. So that's kind of a good way of easing yourself into it. But having that support infrastructure around there to just make things easy for you, like not having to worry about like this and worry about that and stress about this, like all the non-40K related stuff, the more of that you can push out of your mind not to have to deal with, the better you're going to perform, in my opinion. What do you think, Vic?
I think, yeah, logistics aren't too bad, to be honest. You just drive a couple of hours to the airport and it takes you directly to Las Vegas. And the thing is, it's like a holiday as well, isn't it? Because you're going to Vegas, you can have a bit of fun as well, you know, go for a few drinks and go gambling. And it's my first time in Vegas, so
it's your first time, so you're still gonna like it. But after you've been there a couple of times, you're gonna be like, man, this city is.
It's a bit weird. I've heard it's a little bit weird, but I'm really hyped for it, and I am going at the same time as Dave, so I'll get a couple of days before the tournament starts just to enjoy it a little bit. And you know, while Dave's doing his exhibition game, I'll be there, but I'll see if I can get some practice on the terrain and see how it all looks, just to get me in the zone. Maybe coming back is going to be a bit stressful. I'm probably going to be jet lagged for work, but that's fine.
For work, it's fine.
It's fine that way around, as long as it's not for 40K.
Yeah, of course.
I actually have my manager at work. He was like, "Oh, you know when you're leaving?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Dude, good luck." Like, it's nice.
Yeah, that's definitely nice. Right, guys. Anything else to add in terms of LVO?
No, I mean, I think we're both just stoked to play it. I'm really happy about the army choice. I think we're in a good position as well. Such a good position having played Nottingham as well. I think if both of us can just play well, obviously, I think if both of us can just play as well as we do here in the UK, then I think we're both in a really good position.
We can but try.
Yep, one game at a time. All you can do is try. And even if you lose a game, it's not the end of the world, right? Like you're still in Vegas, you still got all your friends around you. That's something that I've tried to be grasping with, dealing with, learning, becoming a bit wiser.
Yeah,
So,
I've been saying it. The success in a single event like this is not indicative of our achievements across this entire season. And we shouldn't attach all our happiness and joy to us like winning every single game at this event. There's too many variables involved. So first and foremost, it is a hobby, and it's got to be enjoyable all the way through. And a big part of that is a positive mindset, regardless of outcome.
Oh yeah, 100%. I would have forgotten about the most important thing. So, what about your lists? Did you change anything, or what have you settled on? Have you actually come to the point that you're taking the exact same list? Are actually lists published already?
Yeah, so lists aren't published yet, but Vic has made the bizarre decision to downgrade his list for some reason.
No, what? No, I've upgraded my list. So,
we basically played the same thing as we did in Nottingham, but Vic, instead of the Rhino, has gone back to the Fate Skimmer, which is the upgraded Zinch caster. It was a bit more reliable. And so we've been going back and forth on all this stuff, and I think most of our other spell loadouts are basically the same at this point. But yeah, this is like literally like one tiny difference. Yeah,
that's it. I've got a couple of Warp Flamer squads as well on my rubrics, rather than just the kind of basic squads. And otherwise the only difference between me and David's list is Rhino versus Fate Skimmer.
Yeah,
I don't have a top ITC spot, but I'd take the Fate Skimmer as well.
Yes, come on.
Man, let me tell you something real though, man. When you're up against these melee armies, the Rhino is very good. That's all I'm gonna say.
It sure is.
Rhino was great against Brian just this evening, man. I'm just gonna put it out there, man.
All right. Well, moving on. We've got another topic that I mentioned at the beginning, and that is playing in teams. So first up, I've got just a really general question. So, is there a thing for teams in the UK?
Yeah, Vic, maybe you go, because if you guys don't know, Vic's recently been accepted into Team England. Of course, Team England is very lucky to have Vic.
Oh, that's okay. Really exciting. But
let's start with that. So maybe, Vic, before you start, maybe you can also mention how the team is selected, etc.
Oh, sure, yeah. So Team England is quite a popular team. I mean, it's generally been quite a successful and competitive team, and the application process involves 16 players getting chosen. You have to basically submit a CV almost, and then after that it'll be narrowed down to 8 players. All of those 16 players need to attend at least one team event with the team. So I attended my first ever 8-man team event, which was quite cool. Got to see how the pairing process works and how the format works in general. And then from there, they selected the 8 players. And, me, Nassim, and Chris Kinnair were the 3 kind of new players who'd never been on Team England before. So, yeah, the team's looking pretty stacked. It's really good. It's a very nice vibe. And this is a good opportunity for me to explore a side of 40k, which is, to answer your initial question, is not particularly popular in the UK, but it's growing in popularity for sure. I think a lot of people put teams as, people say it's the best way of playing 40k, and I can kind of see where they're coming from with that. It's certainly enjoyable, and it feels a lot more balanced in a way. No matter what the meta is, it feels more balanced to play in a team event.
Because you're playing with multiple factions, essentially, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it is going to be more balanced. Yeah, I would definitely agree. Teams hasn't kicked off much here in the UK. Obviously, I spend a lot of time playing on TTS. Well, I don't actually spend that much time. Coming up to LVO, I spend a lot, obviously. But I'm quite involved in some of the online communities and whatnot like that. And definitely the divide between UK, EU, and USA is that Europe is very focused on teams, which is great to see, because I think teams really does hamper a really positive community at a national level. And so I think that's a big thing, because the national teams can really inspire a lot of players to join up and play more. And I think in the UK we've got that, but I don't think it necessarily trickles down as much as perhaps it does in Europe. What do you think?
Yeah, you're right, aren't you, Dave? Like when I hear the Polish community, and this is gonna be relevant, I'm on the right podcast for this. The Polish community talk about even their singles events. In their mind, they've got team events. You know, they're not playing for singles; they're playing for teams, and they're playing for their WTC national team. And over here, like even Team England is half people who dedicate themselves to teams and half people who dedicate themselves to singles. And I'd say a team of team players, team 40K players, is probably stronger than a team of singles players who just happen to be the best single players. I don't know. That's a bit of a hot take.
No, I think you're right. Genuinely think you're right. I don't think a year ago I would have said that as well. And I know that a year ago I would have probably said like it's more important to be a strong singles player. But having the team experience there is definitely important, especially if you're in a position where you're going to be making decisions about the team, checking lists, doing pairings is massive, obviously. But it's really important to function together as a team. And I think that's going to be something interesting to watch. For some of the teams attending at WTC, like how they function as a team. So yeah, it's interesting. For me, myself, I've got Team New Zealand. Here we go, baby. Just confirmed. We're potentially bringing 8 fucking mad lad Kiwis to WTC 2023, mate. That's how we're going to be rolling. And it's something I've been working on, trying to get together for like the last 6 months. And yeah, it looks like I was just talking to our team captain today. It looks like we could potentially be bringing a team of 8, which is like absolutely insane, because I mean, honestly, nothing's going to make me prouder than playing in that New Zealand shirt. Win, lose, for us, it's just going to be such a magical time to bring everyone together and represent our country. We've been playing some online team events, and I think, probably goes without being said that from a team perspective, I'm a bit of an outlier, because obviously I live here in the UK, but I play a lot, create content, a top ITC player. So I know what the scene is like back in New Zealand, and I was initially quite worried in terms of like how much experience people would have playing at high level games at tournaments. But I've been really pleasantly surprised. Like the guys from New Zealand are super keen to learn. They're super keen to get better. They're really open-minded, and they've got a fantastic attitude, which is like 4 of the most important things that you want to foster in a team environment, like going forward. So I know for a fact that when after 2023 WTC, they're all going to catch the bug and be so hyped about playing teams after the event, which is going to be even better. So we're going to be playing a bunch more online team events. Like I've already learned so much from playing them, and I know as a team, like we've gotten better and better. I think we came 3rd in one recently, almost drawing to the top team. So definitely some potential in there. It's really fun. Definitely. Yeah, I'm stoked for it.
So I guess that would be a first for Team New Zealand to appear on the WTC, or it won't be a first?
Yeah, it'll be a first. I think we had an ETC team once, but this will definitely be the first full team, and we'll be the first team for WTC as well. So we've got a captain, Nare, who's working down there in New Zealand. I decided to not go for the captaincy because I wanted someone to have. I think it's better to have someone in the community as well, because I'm just David over here in the UK. So they all know each other, which is awesome. So they talk to each other a lot in person, see each other at events, and then we obviously chat a lot over Discord and Messenger and stuff like that as well. Yeah,
that's amazing. Just getting another nationality over at the event, it's really great. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that nowadays with TTS having grown, etc., it's much easier to access high-level games, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like without TTS, I don't think this would have been possible at all, because it would have been impossible to evaluate players, and it would have just been impossible to practice as well, right? Like New Zealand is the furthest away country.
You wouldn't be able to play with them, really, would you?
Yeah, exactly right. And New Zealand is the furthest away country from the destination that we're traveling to. Cape Town, South Africa might be equally, but New Zealand, you're talking to get to the event. It's about 27 hours It's about 25 hours of flying, but you know, through transiting and stuff like that, it's well over 30 hours to get there. So it's a really big effort for our people to get over there, and I'm really happy that they will take the decision to come and play.
Excellent. And Vic, congrats on the spot in the team.
Yeah, thanks, man. But gosh, just hearing David talk there, that's pretty wild achievement, man. That you guys managed to pull that together. That's really cool. Yeah.
I honestly can't wait for it, man. Like, we're gonna have our New Zealand shirts there. It's gonna be like
wild, dressed like an Iron Hand, killing people with iron hands. Already know the meta.
Hey, look, if Australia is anything to go by, you know, we've got our Antipodean, Oceanic, Australasian. You know, we've got some high standards to work.
Bro, they're dressed like Imperial Fists. You guys are dressed like Iron Hands. You got this.
It's gonna be 10th edition. No need to worry about Iron Hands at that point in time, probably.
Probably,
So, are there actually any team events in the UK? And what's your record? Have you had the chance to attend them? I mean, there is the annual, I guess you could say by now, ITT in February, and I think Zach had another team event now planned. It's somewhere in May.
Yep. So the Birmingham GT Super Major, which was a singles event, a very large singles event, has now been transitioned into a teams event because of the popularity of it. So there's 2 UKTC team events, the ITT, like you mentioned, the International Team Tournament, and the Birmingham Super Major. And then there's also a number of team events which occur in Element Games, which is in the north of England, and that's done by Northern Warlords. Like Battle for Britain, those kinds of things. Those are all team events which occur and have been going on for a number of years. And that's usually the kind of hotbed in which Team England tend to practice. We did actually attend, me, Dave, and some of our team members from our team called Dicedown. We attended a team event, the International Team Tournament last season, which was pretty awesome. We brought 2 teams of 5. That was pretty wild, wasn't it? Dave was doing all our pairings. It was smashing it.
Yeah, it was good fun. Yeah, we actually lost to Team England by 1 victory point off the draw or something, right? But it was a bit scuffed, you know. We had like terrible lists. Like 2 of our players had like no practice. So yeah, I mean, I think this time around we've got,
come on. If you put it that way, it's detrimental to Team England to having only beaten you by 1 point.
Well, it wasn't like
well, it's also only a 5-man, isn't it? It's a 5-man tournament.
Yeah,
it's a little bit different.
Yeah, and so no, it should be good. Like we've got a similar team going to the one in February as well, and then we've got another 5-man team going to the tournament in May as well. So it's cool. Yeah, those tournaments are actually worth like a reasonable amount of ITC points as well. So like it's a win-win. I think for everyone that attends, I think that's why they're so popular. Obviously, because teams is a blast as well. So yeah, really looking forward to it. I hope they can scale it up to maybe 8-mans, but I think 5-mans is a good start, no matter where it is.
All right, and you've mentioned your Dicedown team, so I'm really curious. How does your team work? Where does it come from? And also, there is an ITC ranking for teams as well. How does that work? And I don't know, is that like a thing in the UK, being in a team, like being in Dicedown or being in, I don't know, Vanguard Tactics or Glasshammer Gaming, because that's the 3 I've seen on the ranking. Mainly.
Yeah, so I think about 80% of our chat is just about football crap, which I don't pay any attention to.
I love it.
It's like politics, football, economics, like
The usual.
And then 40k. So I think like Vic and I have obviously been the most active players in our team, and it's probably fair to say like it's a bit of a lull for most of our teammates this year. Like it's been Vic and I. Conrad's been playing quite a bit. Conrad Bartowicz is a great player as well. Been playing a bit this year, but a lot of people have been going through a lot of life stuff. You know, big overarching things in life. And so that's kind of, they've fallen out of the game. But I know when the game picks up, like you can tell when stuff gets released and stuff like that. They're like, you know, they're all like talking about me and they're like, oh, what's this trial? Like people like Boris Mitchev, like who hasn't been playing, I don't think at all this season, you know, he'll be like talking, he'll be like, oh, you know, what's looking good? Like, you know, oh, I played a game all of a sudden. And you're like, dude, you haven't played a game yet. So yeah, it kind of works like that. I think we are still the ranked #1 UK team as well, despite Vic and I playing for most of that. Like we did have a good turnout LGT, which bring our numbers up, thankfully. But then there are a couple of other teams. War Masters is another big team in the UK. Vanguard Tactics is another big team. And I think War Masters and Vanguard Tactics both have a lot of players going to LVO as well. So it'll be interesting to see this year, I think, who takes the top spot. Both of those teams have really have grown a lot and have absorbed some good players and have had a lot of stellar players like come up this year, I think, as well. So, you know, I think the team took, you know, I think it's nice if the team, you know, if the team environment in the United Kingdom, not the national teams, like kind of devolves a little bit, where the power isn't kind of centralized in one, you know, superpower team, like I think Dicedown has been for like a number of years.
Right, and do you have
Vic's got to have something to say on that. Come on.
Oh, okay, yeah. So,
well, most of the teams in England are not like, they don't play as a team. They're more a group of singles players who are friends. That's kind of how they tend to be. You know, Dicedown is just 10 players who just happen to be friends. And when I joined, I think it was 5 players. And then progressively we've just said, you know what, this guy's cool. Let's see if he wants to join us. And we just progressively added one by one. And Dave was one of those. Yeah, people just bounce in and out of 40K. You don't have to be an incredible 40K player to be on Dicedown, for example. Sure. You just have to be a good person. Is the key thing.
We all knew each other as well. Like, obviously, I moved here from the UK, and then I knew Vincent Chan, who's like my best mate over here, and then I just started playing 40K, and then eventually just started to get to know everyone in the team, and then started practicing against them because I wanted to play competitive. And then I guess, you know, name got around a little bit, won a tournament, was doing really well and stuff like that. And then like I already knew everyone anyway, so it was kind of just a logical step for someone like me to join the team. But like that's a huge part about getting better as a 40K player, is joining a team, being around players that have like-minded interests, especially with TTS now. You can get such high-quality practice games against your teammates, really reflect and get better. It's the most cohesive environment to foster a competitive mindset and improve your player skill over a period of time.
Right. So basically it's just a group of mates. You don't do recruitment or any semi-professional crap.
No. But we do have a world-class poker player, snooker player on our team, Neil Robertson, who's no joke. One of the best snooker players on the planet.
Same, one of the best in the world.
Lovely guy as well.
Right, well, good for him. Okay, I think I'm out of teams questions. Guys, anything left to add? I don't think I'll be holding you here much longer at this point. Obviously, I mean, we did have on the chat coming up into this, we had some questions about Arcs of Omen, etc. But maybe I'll skip those because I don't want to disturb you from, you know, your zones, as mentioned before. But actually, after this season ends, and by season I mean the ITC season, which ends with the LVO, if you got any plans, goals, milestones going into next season, and also in terms of your channel, have you got any plans for developing that?
Well, we discussed the channel a fair bit in the latest podcast episode, and you know, the main things for us is kind of just carry on roughly what we're doing. You know, just reporting back on the events we go to, how we feel the meta and the game is developing. But we also wanted to try and bring guests on, you know, and you know, maybe get a couple of Polish guys or something on there as well. You guys are a big part of our scene as well as your own. So I think definitely getting guests on, getting more views on, doing it in our production style as well is going to be a big part of our 2023 plan.
Yeah, definitely. I think both of us are going to be attending roughly the same amount of events. Like, although having said that, I'm getting married in September, so you know, whatever event is in September, no go. Yeah, things like that. I think the podcast has been such a big thing for me as well. Like, it's been such a fun part to have a relationship with the game in a way like that. So yeah, it's good. I think just continue to just play well, right? Like, it'd be nice if I just played as well as I did this year as next year, and hopefully play better and make more friends and hang out with new people and meet new people. And that's honestly the huge part about the game for me: meeting people, having fun, hanging out, competing. It's a big trifecta. And if you've only got one of those to enjoy the game by, then perhaps you should expand into the other areas as well.
And to win a medal with New Zealand, right?
Oh, mate.
This sporting baby. Here we go.
Nah, mate. Singles. Hey, the singles event. There we go. That'd be good to take home at WTC for the national team. So
Amazing.
All right. Well, in that case, thanks, guys, and obviously, hopefully, you achieve all of that you've mentioned. And so that was David and Vik from the Fireside. I can't recommend their channel enough. And like I said, very thankful for them coming in here to Contact Lost. And if you like the content we made, hit the subscribe button, like our content, share it, because that helps us grow. And hopefully we'll have another episode for you next week. Thanks very much, guys.
Cheers, Joker. Thank you.
thanks very much, Joker.
Bye, everyone.